Hello and welcome everyone to another exciting episode of Empower Her Voices podcast series. Today we are here with our sixth episode, and today we are going to dive into a transformative conversation where we are going to talk about how mindfulness and AI are reshaping education. And our focus is going to be how these innovative tools are actually addressing emotional challenges, enhancing self awareness, and then how it is creating more personalized learning experience. And today we are thrilled to have our distinguished guest with us, Doug Whitewolff with us. He is the CEO of Transformation Math. He is an educator with over more than 15 years of experience, and he is a passionate advocate of promoting and advocating accessible learning for all students. And his groundbreaking work actually into integrating mindfulness and AI into education is helping students overcome stress and self doubt, particularly in the subject of maths. So I'm excited that how these things are making impact. So we would like to welcome our guest. Doug, thank you so much for taking time out. We're so grateful that you are here, and we would like to hear it from your side, your journey, and particularly your passion for mathematics, mindfulness, and AI.
Hi, good morning or good evening or wherever
Good,
folks are watching from.
yes, good
Thanks for
evening.
having me. And yeah, so it's exciting. I taught high school math in public education for 12 years, and I'm now doing my own business. And I just saw some things happening in the education world that didn't sit right with me. And I thought that my skills could be used to reach a broader group of folks. And it's exciting to be right now working on an app that incorporates AI. There's just so much happening with
Yeah.
artificial intelligence and the way that it's going to be transforming how we do much of our work, and education is no different.
Yeah, yeah. So, what we want to know is that coming towards your early years education and then, heading towards your. So, is it something that was there because the passion for certain subject is something which is there in the child right, like from the beginning? Or is it something that, just goes on with the time? So, we just want to, I'm specifically talking about mathematics.
Yeah, it's I was always pretty decent at math. It came,
Okay.
I think, kind of easily, and that's just pure luck. But I didn't wasn't super interested in it until later on, and actually in high school, I wrestled in high school. And my high school wrestling coach was a math teacher. So I thought I was going to be a wrestling coach and a math teacher. I didn't have a lot of
Right.
didn't think outside the box too much. But and then I thought that wasn't going to happen. I wanted to be a philosophy professor. So my background is actually in philosophy and math, and I think that that's part of what gives me a different view. Seeing the really analyzing concepts is what we do in philosophy, and seeing how they work together, and that's what math is. And historically, many of the great, and I'm certainly not among them, great mathematicians were philosophers, and vice versa.
Great, great. So, look, talking about mindfulness and AI is something that everybody nowadays is talking about AI. But what we are actually looking for, and obviously from this episode, I'm quite sure that we'll be getting very useful insights that, how does mindfulness help students manage stress, or how does it like help in creating that kind of self-doubt, and how it is going to address that if you're heading towards mathematics by integrating these two things, because these are kind of complex concepts when it comes to the actual implementation, because everybody is talking about AI, but what matters is, are they doing it the right way? Are they actually creating an impact? So what are your thoughts about this thing?
Yeah, so you hit quite a few there. I'm gonna see if I can keep up with them. If not, you can get me back on track. Um, So when it comes to mindfulness, I think that the way that it's being framed within the my experience, and that's all I can speak to. Other people are doing different things out there, and I've not experienced them. But in my experience, the mindfulness movement has been pretty narrow, and it's been presented to teachers as something that they should be, using or engaging with students. And there's pretty minimal training around it, if any. And uh, unfortunately, the real value and the benefit of practicing, and I think I might prefer practicing to mindfulness because, like I said, mindfulness seems so narrow. Um, there's study that goes along with it, and the real value that I see is when we can have enough mindfulness to recognize an emotion arising in our experience. And before habit kicks in, which for most people, me included, habit kicks in about 99.9% of the time. It's just so deeply ingrained in our patterns that we just respond to the emotion without ever thinking about what we're going about to do. So if you can take that space between the emotion arising, you have to see it arise before the habit kicks in, and you kind of allow your mind to consider what your options are and how to react to it. And that right there, I think, is the key. And it's a practice. You aren't going to take a few deep breaths and then be able to have that arise as a possibility for you. And coming back to it as many times during the day, noticing your breath during the day, and then sitting and actually practicing the noticing of the breath is what allows us to then notice the emotion arise and have some space before the habit kicks in. So that's what I would say about mindfulness or practice. And if you have any questions about that, I can be happy to answer them. And then I'll answer about AI.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So, Doug, we have Kailash with us, and he is also an educator and he is an artist as well. So, he has asked this question that does artificial intelligence improve learning settings for students, or it facilitates the teacher's ability to make learning easier or more comprehensible for the students?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the jury's out, and I would say that it's really, as you said, it's about the implementation
Yeah.
and how do we use it. It's a tool, and if we view it as a tool, then we need to know how to handle that tool and when it should be used. I say to my kids all the time, just because you have a hammer doesn't mean everything's a nail. And
Yeah.
so
True.
they uh, they think that's a funny saying, and it is, but it is so true, and it's true with AI as well. And one of the things that I think that I believe is that uh, AI can deliver instruction that is tailored to an individual and what they do and don't know. But if the OpenAI just released an amazing new capability on ChatGPT, which is a visual interaction. So
Yeah.
you can share your screen on your iPad. So let's say you have an Apple Pencil and an iPad, and you can
Okay.
do a math problem, and the AI can be interacting with you about that math problem, and that's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
uh, what the AI hasn't been trained to do as it sits there out of the box, so to speak, it hasn't been trained to interact like a tutor. It hasn't been trained to ask questions that allow it to determine what the student knows so that then it can ask other questions that will point out new learning for the student. So that kind of an interaction, I think, is what's necessary for an AI to serve as a good tutor. In classrooms right now, there are different settings. There are small groups and there are activities and there are interactives, but uh, in creating those same kinds of experiences for students tailored to their current knowledge is what I think AI is really capable of.
That's great, Kailash. Hope you have got your answer. So, talking about what you have just said, that AI is more about like, interpreting or the analysis of what has been asked, but not as a tutor. So, do you see this as like something which is a gap which needs to be fulfilled, or what? Like, how do you see it? Because this was something in my mind as well that I was about to ask this question. When we talk about dealing with different student needs, you talk about experiential learning and personalized learning. So how effective AI in a classroom setting? So we're talking about a class in which there are like 15 to 18 students setting from primary years or from elementary. So how it can actually help both the educator and the learner to have a deeper connection with each other in terms of understanding? Or is it like something that the educator needs to do, or AI can be like, served as a facilitator in this situation?
Um, wow, that's a big question. I think that hopefully there are a lot of people much smarter than me working on this, but I think that what has to happen is that people who are developing implementations of AI need to be working with educators. Um, what what do the educators are the ones with the expertise about teaching and learning and engaging with students. And if developers are working on something independently, they're usually not the experts in teaching and learning. And so, what I think needs to happen is that they need to come together and really start talking about what's possible with AI so that the educators can point at something and say that would be useful, and so that the developers ask questions to the educators. What kind of help do you need? There's uh, just a big a lot of work that needs to be done determining what it's capable of. Now, uh, it's I don't see AI being implemented as it stands right now, just a chat GPT, so a large language model. I see that being minimally beneficial. But when we couple it with really specific activities to engage students with specific learning objectives for
Right.
a session, then that allows the AI to more fully determine what the student does and doesn't know, and then move them along in their learning, just like a tutor would in a session.
Great. So it's like a guided learning, if I am not wrong. Is it
Yeah,
guided
it's a
learning?
guided learning. I think that's a good way of
Oh,
thinking about it.
okay. So, taking it further from here, so when we are talking about two very important things, mindfulness and AI. So, mindfulness, if I'm not wrong, it's about, having peace and concentration and focus from here. And then AI is a support out there providing us whatever we would like to, have it from that side. So, what's the relationship of creativity? And then we are promoting critical thinking nowadays. We want our students to think out of the box. We want our students to come up with the solution. And if for every single thing they are reaching to the different tools of AI, may it be ChatGPT or anything
Mhm.
else. So is it like a kind of hindrance, or is it something which is going to be, something that is going to uh, prevent them from, thinking, and they'll say, oh, okay, let's get the answer from there. So how do you see this thing? Because, being an educator, what I have observed that nowadays students are heavily relying on these AI tools, which is good, which we also encourage. But then where is this process of having balance between the creativity and then that critical thinking? How do you see this thing?
Yeah, I think that this is also sometimes make connections that don't actually make much sense to other folks. They just pop up. But I think this is related in my mind to what happens if uh, we end up in a situation where AI is so powerful that we don't need to, on average, an average human doesn't need to really learn much. They don't have a job that they need to go and demonstrate their learning at. They don't need to continue to learn. So, what's that world like? And I think that it's related here because when I think of that world, um, I think, wow, what an opportunity to explore whatever I want to learn about.
Yeah.
And what an opportunity to get to engage with people that I don't normally have enough time to engage with, and to deepen my experience as a human, and really dive into living, determining for myself what it means to live the good life. You know, that's a thing that philosophers talk about. Well, what is the good life? And uh, what it comes down to me is we either have to land as a people on the planet believing that learning and knowledge are good for their own sake, or that
Okay.
they're not. And if we land in a place where learning and knowledge, as it seems to me to have been propagated for the last, um, I don't know, 200 years, it's good for making money. If learning and knowledge is good for nothing more than making money, we're in trouble because we're not going to need um, to do that learning anymore. But if learning and knowledge are good for their own sake, then as humans we can flourish. And so I think that's what it boils down to. And maybe I answered your question kind of a little bit, maybe not at all, but I'd be happy to
No,
hear what
you
your
have
thoughts are
you
there.
have answered it very well, so it's clear in my mind as well. So we have another question: that is it possible to regulate how students use technology in class? We are unable to guarantee that students are paying attention to the lecture that is being given in class, as we all know.
Yeah, yeah. So I know that there are technologies out there. One of them is called Go Guardian. I think my wife is also a teacher, and I have two boys. And what Go Guardian allows you to do is in the classroom, as students are on their devices, the teacher can see all of the screens that the students are using at any
Oh,
given moment. So
okay.
that way, if a student goes off from what they're supposed to be doing, and goes and starts playing a game on their Chromebook, the teacher will see it if they're looking. I think there are also maybe some features where it'll highlight that student for you, but I'm not positive. I've not used Go Guardian much, but so
Okay.
there is that. But what I also see is that if a student has a super powerful computer in their pocket all the time that has video games and social media on it, which they do, uh, then phones just are so small that when I was in the classroom, I could not guarantee that every student was doing what they were supposed to be doing at the moment. In fact, most of the time, if I had to put money on it, I would have said, no, someone in here is probably on their phone, and I just don't know it. So, using whether or not we can monitor students' use of technology. Um, if we allow phones in schools, then no, we can't monitor technology. If we require that they use a Chromebook that is the school issued Chromebook, and that we use Go Guardian and things like that, then we can. But I think also the question might relate to, something that we're seeing happening, which is students using technology to cheat, and to say that some of the work is their work, which it is primarily not. And
Right.
I'm interested in this question too because as I create things using large language models, I wonder how much of this is my work? When I look at it, I can see that the thoughts I'll engage with in a conversation with a chat GPT or with Claude or, whatever LLM I'm using. I'll engage with it for quite a while, and then I'll have it produce something, and then I'll have it and change that part. And so how much of that is mine? I don't know. I think it's an interesting question. So I think that the question that was asked also points at that, and that's just a conversation I think we need to have as different sectors. One group might decide that the answer is something completely different than another group might decide.
True, Doug. It's very well said because the way you have explained it is actually you have explained it in terms of a real life scenario. So how it's actually going on in the classroom. So thank you so much for that. So while talking about the integration and how it has been done, so talking about your entrepreneurial setup, which is transformation math. So I've gone through the website and there was a lot about the balance of having mindfulness and AI. So how you are managing actually mindfulness and AI to help students with maths. So just walk us through your the entire process and concept.
Yeah, so mine is not implemented yet. I'm working on an app right now. So we're
Yeah.
working on an MVP, a minimum viable product app that will use AI to aid in the student in the way we've talked about. Um,
Okay.
but also, I also see the AI as possibly engaging and helping students with the practices of mindfulness, and
Yeah.
engaging with them to uh, if you set up a AI that has access to a database so that it can go and see where the student left off in their previous practices, what their current
Mhm.
understanding is. So it keeps track of what a student is doing, and knows and understands, and what kinds of triggers they have around math. So
Okay.
by trigger, fractions are just a super common
Mhm.
touch point for students that often I can be engaging with a student, and we're doing fine. And then we do the same kind of a problem with a fraction, and they shut down. And uh,
Oh.
and AI, depending on the model you're using, um,
Mm.
can can know what's happening there. They can determine that the student is shutting down in some way, and
Yes.
that their response demonstrates that the student is having an emotional response. Now, uh, again, you'd need to train the AI to make sure that it then responds accordingly, and
Yes.
and and acknowledges the student's emotional experience, because it's pretty clear that that is key for people feeling seen, is that their emotions need to be acknowledged. And I think that this touches on something else interesting, which is, what are humans going to be how are we going to be engaging with AI as a friend, a confidant? I engage with it currently at times, asking questions about how I ought to respond to an email that has really upset me. And I had there's the real time voice feature. It's OpenAI's uh,
Yeah.
you can just talk to it, and you can interrupt it, and it's more like a conversation. And one night I leaned back in my chair, and I put my headphones on. I was listening to music, and I put the microphone down close to me, and I closed my eyes, and I talked to this AI model about an email, and what how I wanted to respond to it, and how what I thought was going to work. Now, uh, at some point, I said, "Hey, can I include this CC this person on the email?" And it said, absolutely, it would make sense for them to be involved. But as
Hmm.
I started having that conversation more deeply, I recognized within myself that the reason why I wanted them to be CC'd was because I wanted them to see that the other person was wrong. and and I noticed that through that conversation, because like with a therapist, part of the value of a therapist is just saying the words out loud so that you can hear them and they can land in a new way in your experience. And so with this AI model, I realized that impetus was
Hmm.
not going to lead to any good. And so I said to the AI, I was like, oh, I just noticed that this is happening for me, and I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't. And then the AI model said, oh, well, if that's your reasoning, then you need to be more direct in your communication, because you want to communicate something that you're not currently communicating. And it was a real enlightening experience for me. I felt like, oh wow, I learned something about myself. I wrote
Yeah.
a better email, and I feel good about the outcome. So I don't remember your question.
No, no, no. I was just so involved in the answer that you were giving because I was relating to a situation where I actually asked something from the AI, and then it was the thing that you have said, that it acted like a therapist. So you actually nailed it. It is actually acting like a therapist. So this I was just wondering that chat gpt or ai or other tools, they are telling us, and when we are asking about different situations, they always give us the answer in terms of balanced emotions, not
Middle
too
of the road.
aggressive. And then what I see is that there's a strong correlation of emotional intelligence. This was something that we were actually having, developing different courses for the students and for the educators out there. So when we are, as we're talking about mindfulness, so do you think that heading towards an age where everything will completely be taken over by AI, or with a guided approach, or with different other approaches are there? So, do you think that we need to work more on the emotional intelligence, being human beings for our kids or for the future generation? And specifically, if you're talking about women and girls who are already like emotionally very charged, so we need to like work more on this bit so that we are at, because earlier when we used to say that okay, we are working on our kids to make them thrive in a competitive environment. Now what is competitive environment? The AI is there, it's ruling. So what do you say about this?
I think that what I think part of your question was, do we need to spend more time working
On
on our
emotional
emotional
intelligence, yes,
intelligence? And
exactly.
yes, absolutely. We although I see there's been a shift towards um, more consideration around emotional intelligence. Uh, Something that I see, and maybe I'm wrong about this, is that there is this idea that if I'm emotionally intelligent,
Hmm.
um, and I'm engaging with someone, that if they have an emotion, a negative emotion, the response seems to be mostly that I've done something wrong. There seems to be an implication that because someone else had a negative emotion, I must have done something wrong. And so I
Hmm.
need to fix it. And I think that this is a real confusion around what emotions are. Emotions are thoughts, ultimately. They're
Yeah.
thoughts that we experience, um, almost, they feel different, but I think they're just thoughts. And if they are just thoughts, my idea about thoughts is that they come, they hang out, and then they go. And that's like emotions too. They come, they hang out, and then they go. And
So,
so if we allow ourselves to recognize that just because I had an emotion doesn't necessarily mean anything.
hmm.
It might not mean
Yeah.
anything. I just had an emotion. And
This-
and instead of, I think that we are so quick to blame others when we have negative emotions. And so when you're talking about emotional intelligence, I think that this kind of communication about what's actually happening, what are emotions, there needs to be, it can't be just practice. It has to
Yes.
be also talking with people who are have been doing this stuff a lot longer than I have, and there's a ton of them out there. Some great people to work with to help us understand what's happening for me, because as soon as most people start practicing some form of mindfulness, the most common first response is, this isn't working. And and the
Mm.
and you say, well, why isn't it working? Well, because my mind's just racing everywhere. And
Yes.
uh no, your mind's always doing that, you're just noticing it. And so there's just so much around the practice that we can't understand in isolation, unless we're just in the tail somewhere, a Buddha just on the verge of awakening. And there
Mm.
just aren't very many people like that. There are, but I'm not sure if I've met one.
Great. I really liked it what you said, that emotions are thoughts, they come, hang out, and then they leave. So it's just within that duration that we are going to, act wisely, or with that approach. That's really it's very well said. So we have our second last question. It's, as a teacher, how can I help students experience the real world? They're interested in digital life and communicate with their friends, family, and neighbors solely through technology, avoiding face to face interactions since it will affect their future.
How can you help them engage with the real world? Well, I'd push back on the question just a touch. I mean, digitally is the real world. I-
Yeah.
It it, it is a part of our world now, and so I'd push on that just a little bit, to think about what is it you mean when you say the real world, and what it means. What it sounds like this the question is implying is that engaging in person with someone
Yeah, I guess
without
he's referring to face to
yeah,
face.
yeah,
Yeah.
without grabbing your phone to show them something. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that the you have to create opportunities for them to find joy in that experience. It's you have to give them an experience in engaging in the real world that they like more than engaging digitally. So creating that experience is difficult. It's especially difficult because we have the um, emotional kick every time we go on social media and
True.
see that someone liked our post, someone
Mm.
who we really liked our post. Oh,
Mhm. True.
that gives us a little
Mm.
emotional boost. And so finding ways to engage in that is tough. But I think that the science is, from what I've seen, is pretty clear that being outside in nature is is a big thing that most people have the same positive responses to. And I think being in nature,
Mm.
walking, and talking with someone um, is up there among the best things in the world. And if you can, for me, um, if I can walk and talk with someone who wants to talk about philosophy, or practices, or our experiences and how they relate to what we think about the world, that's the ideal. Now, a 15-year-old, probably going to be a stretch. So you got to find a way to really give them that same boost. And I'm sorry, I don't have that answer.
No, no, you have answered very well, because here you have actually answered another perspective, in which how can one cater different learning experience. We talked about diverse needs of students. So you have actually answered that we need to put in extra effort, and digital word is the real word. That's something that, yes, we once we are going to have this in our mind, and we have accepted it, that it's here and it's here to stay, and we need to actually not deal with it, we need to experience, we need to work with it, we need to work along with it. That's what I guess we need to do. And so talking about what we have understood so far, you have beautifully narrated actually the relation of having that experiential learning within the classroom boundaries and touching with the digital world, and how we can have that balance. So this is something that is very clearly understand the few ambiguities in my mind as well, which is like clear now that how we can have it. So as we like wrap up, so the educators or the learners or the policy makers who wish to implement mindfulness and AI into their practices, may it be education or their profession, so what is that one advice that you would like to give to them?
Um, I think be be open and be
Okay.
curious. Curiosity usually leads to positive places. Be be willing to not know. I mean, that's what curiosity requires. And that's something that I see happen with students all the time. Is uh, I historically, let's say 20,000 years ago,
Mm.
if a person didn't know what was going on around them,
Okay.
they were probably about to die. If you didn't know what was happening, you were in trouble 20,000 years ago. So I think that the emotional response to not knowing is deeply programmed within us. So
Yes.
not knowing is a very scary thing, and we have to practice not knowing in order to, I don't want to say be okay with it, because we're probably not going to.
Yes.
But being able to allow the negative emotions that
It's
come with not knowing. And so we need to be okay with not knowing, and that is closely tied to being wrong. Maybe we have ideas, and
true.
if we know, we just know that our ideas are right, well
Mm.
then any information that comes along that shows that maybe we're not right, we'll just discard. And that's dangerous. That's dogma. And dogma is the opposite of curiosity. And
Yes.
I think it's so important for educators and folks who are in decision making positions to be open to the possibility that their positions are mistaken.
Great. I really like it. I actually noted it down that what you have said, that practice not knowing, right? It's something that you have said this. So yes, admitting that, or being coming out from the denial mode of that, yes, we are wrong, and we need to relearn or unlearn or learn again. That concept. It really makes sense. And thank you so much, Doug, for sharing your valuable insights. And we're quite clear. You've actually beautifully narrated with real life examples that how these two tools actually mindful, not tools actually, we would rather call it like the entire strategy or the concept or the entire real world, that how mindfulness and AI can be smartly used and integrated in our real life and for learners and educators. And I would really like to repeat the same thing that you have said, that digital word is the new word. And then you have at the end how you have wrapped it up, that not knowing, we need to practice that. If we don't, then obviously we are going to be in problem, and we need to deal with that, not just for our own self, for our kids as well, and for obviously the learners as well. So I'm sure for the learner, for the viewers, it's quite clear that what Doe has shared as per his experience and expertise, that these tools are actually driving a revolutionary, kind of thing for the learning process and for the teaching process as well. And we're so grateful to you, Doug, for sharing your expertise with us, and coming from a person who has actually experienced it and implemented it. it makes a lot of sense, and then one can relate as well. And we wish you all the best. The way you're actually scaling both the things for the learners across the globe is commendable, and I'm sure that it is creating an impact, and we'll have more mathematicians who are actually sound in terms of a balanced approach when they're practicing mindfulness. They're using AI, but still they're good from here and they're implementing it. So thank
Well,
you
thank
so
you
much.
so much. And math is a really great place to do some practices because so many people have so many negative emotions.
True, very well said, very well said. And thank you so much, Joe. It was pleasure talking to you, and we have this insightful session, which is actually need of the hour as well. And you have cleared a couple of misunderstandings and misperceptions as well that were there regarding AI. Specifically, you mentioned about the tool that we can consider it as a therapist, or when we are talking to AI tool, we should not like just solely rely. We can just have a guided approach for the usage, which makes sense. Thank you. And thank you everyone for viewing this episode. And I'm sure by following the insight shared by our esteemed guests, you can actually make sure the balanced integration and implementation of these two concepts, which is mindfulness and AI. And it is the future, it's here. And see you again with another empowering episode. Thank you.